Yo, this is Fantasy Fling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 7 review. We are reviewing the Millie Maker and cash game strategy. So let's take a look back at the week that was. All right, before we hop into the Millie Maker, it is a weekend review after all, and we had some big wins at DFS Army this past week. Our boy, Squee Andy, top 20 Millie Maker. This was my first full week in the Army. He posted in the Discord, and I mean, look at these. Both of these wins, we're going to get to rankers here in a second, but near and dear to my heart as a Broncos fan, epic game. They came back. 30 plus points in the fourth quarter, ended up winning the game. And, top 20 with a Bo Nix, a Sutton stack. And really, you probably wouldn't have done that. But, just the Knicks, naked Knicks was probably really what you needed in this spot. We're going to kind of review some of his lineups real quick because he did post top 20 in the Millie. So good for him. First week. Welcome to DFS Army. And then the Rankers, 2003, 222 points for 75K. And I don't know what contest that, he put this in, but it just goes to show contest selection, right? Obviously we all want the Millie win. 233 points, however, was only good for 2K in the Millie. And in this contest, 222 points was good for 75K. So contest selection obviously is crucial in DFS, and that's something that we preach, even though, we love, obviously, attacking the Millie Maker and, reviewing the lineups. It's not the most EV contest until it is, until you win it, or until you place like top 3, essentially. But Rankers here with another Knicks lineup. Knicks to Sutton and AJ Brown. I mean, this is a crazy combination of players. Getting the low-owned Knicks stack there. And then, AJ Brown, Michael Pittman, Trey McBride, Judkins, Javonte Williams. So really good lineup here for $75,000. If you want to become a DFS Army subscriber, use code FANTASYFLING. It gives you 10% off a VIP subscription. Maybe you can finish top 20 in the Millie like our boy Squee Andy in the first week. I don't know. I'm not going to have unrealistic expectations. I'm not saying this is going to happen for everyone, but, obviously the coaching, the tools, the domination station, the cheat sheets, all the things throughout the week certainly work as we've had, a lot of winners time and time again. But let's get into what actually took down the Millie this past weekend. If you like these breakdowns, these rewinds, the weekend review, the Millie Maker review, hit that like button. Let me know. Let me know how the week went for you. Now, this lineup was pretty crazy. We had a Justin Herbert double stack here with Keenan Allen and a Rondé Godson. And it's funny because this was a double tight end lineup. And, I knew it was going to be a double tight end week. I just had a feeling. When I set my domination station, when I was setting it up, getting the settings that I wanted, I allowed for more tight end in the flex than I normally would. And the reason being is there was just such good value at tight end with, Zach Ertz, Mason Taylor, Harold Fannin. I really thought like it was going to be a double tight end week. Hand built some of those lineups myself. What I didn't think is that Godson was going to be the guy that you needed. And obviously Herbert to Keenan Allen and Godson was the stack that took it down in this lineup. And I think, the biggest difference here is obviously, Knicks was the nuts, but you weren't going to get to a Knicks plus Keenan Allen and Godson. And that's just like where stacking is just so prevalent. And, you see it here with a Justin Herbert double and a Jonathan Taylor bring back. And, I've seen a lot of discourse about this lately. It's interesting. Some of like DFS pros will say that, like you really don't want the running back going off in that game. Like it could be like slower pace. As far as like, having a game stack, like do you want the wide receivers on the other side? Do you want a stack on the other side? I think though it kind of depends very much on the running back. Like if you have a running back who's like a grind it out, going to get extra yards and they're milking clock. That's a bad game environment. However, when you got a guy like Jonathan Taylor who's breaking off long runs, scoring multiple touchdowns, and now the Chargers are in a hole and they have to dig themselves out of, that is like the type of scenario where this Justin Herbert double stack gets there, and that's obviously the story that is being told with this lineup. That is exactly what happened. So I love that stack. So it was a QB +2 with a Jonathan Taylor bring back. Now we had Javonte as a one-off here. And, this lineup didn't need Javonte. Could have had Judkins, of course, at a cheaper price than Javonte. And I was kind of surprised Judkins didn't make it into a winning lineup because he smashed. But the process here, I understood the process here, just getting a piece from that Dallas and Washington game. And this ended up being the game script that you wanted. Dallas doubled Washington scores, just too many injuries for Washington. Really backed up at wide receiver. And then obviously Daniels gets hurt. And then Rashee Rice here is a one-off. He was just underpriced, and this made a ton of sense at 5,600. You got 10 targets, like he smashed, and they basically called off the dogs. Like Rashee Rice, if they had this game bed competitive, he would have scored well over 30 points. And then, we got Olave. Olave finally got the touchdowns. And it's funny because I've been saying each and every week, play Chris Olave. We have to play him in cash specifically. I was a little worried in tournaments. He's not a guy I've had a lot of exposure to because the ceiling has not really been there, but his price hasn't fluctuated a whole lot. He's kind of been, 5,300, 5,100, 5,400. And this was a good spot, and the volume has been there. So if we got some positive touchdown regression, you could see how, he does hit essentially 4x plus his salary as he did here. And then Trey McBride is smashing. And it's funny. I think, we've talked about this. We're drafting best ball teams. And the big reason I didn't want to draft Trey McBride in best ball is I really like the rookie tight end class, specifically with Tyler Warren. And I liked the late round guys, but also Kyler Murray just kind of kills the value of Trey McBride. We've seen Trey McBride have his best games when Kyler Murray's out. So I'm hoping they move on from Kyler Murray this next year and we could play a lot more Trey McBride. But that's something as far as DFS goes, slate to keep in mind. If Trey McBride, he's going to be elevated if Kyler Murray's potentially going to be out of that game. And then, one of the stories of the slate that I think was interesting is just the defenses kind of nailed all the defenses. Like loved the Browns going against the Dolphins, loved Carolina going against the Jets. Like this was one of the few slates where 3K and less like really hit, and there was just some good spots. The narrative on Carolina D is they're not good, and they've actually been pretty good this year. So love this lineup. Let's see what second place did. Second place was another Bo Nix lineup. So very similar. However, obviously wow. So this one had Godson in it. That's crazy. Just didn't have the firepower at wide receiver that you really needed. Like you needed a guy to have over 30 points at wide receiver, and this lineup just did not have it, but was so close. Like crushed it with JT, with Judkins, got Nix, obviously, naked Nix, and certainly would have got there. Was just a point behind. So that's a really good lineup. And it's crazy to be able to get Nix and still end up on Godson without the stack. And then third place, another Herbert double. This one, same thing, but this one had Jordan Addison over Olave. That was the biggest difference. And also had Cleveland. Quentin Johnson and Godson here. Not enough from Quentin Johnson. And another Justin Herbert double. So, that's kind of the top 5 lucky guesses. I'm curious what lucky guesses did. And then let's look at our boy here. Supersonic Bros. Okay. So, yeah, we'll take a look at Supersonic Bros here in a second. Lucky Guess is a very sharp DFS player. Just wanted to quickly go over his or her exposures. Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Godson. Yeah, a lot of Herbert stacks up here. Let's see what the exposures look like. So, Rashee Rice, over the field on Rice. Looks like was, very heavy on the Chargers with 33% exposure to Johnston. Keenan Allen, 18%, so triple the field on Keenan Allen. Even with the field on Ladd. Yeah, triple the field on Justin Herbert. So really was heavy on that Justin Herbert on the Chargers stacks. Identified a few spots of running back that they liked. Javonte, Jonathan Taylor, and Judkins. Not so much Judkins, actually. Under the field on Judkins, but over the field on JT and Javonte. Under on Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. That certainly helped. Just even with the field on Breece Hall. Breece Hall was chalk that I just did not understand. Wow, a lot of New Englandy, 49%. Just targeting Tennessee. And, I think there's something to be taken from that each and every week. Let's just go in on the Tennessee, the defense that's playing against Tennessee. A lot of flat exposures everywhere else. That makes sense. Just let's go heavy in a few spots and then flat everywhere else. Take your stands. Tyler Warren and Trey McBride, a lot of those two, and those were good plays. Almost quadruple the field on Godson, and when a guy's 1%, that's really what you need. That's enough, right? So really good there. Let's go look at Supersonic Bros lineup, and only 9 lineups, so we don't have to get crazy with exposures. We can just take a look at what Supersonic Bros did. This was Knicks in this lineup. So you're probably guessing just hand builds, just a lot of the good plays with Knicks and top 20 in the Millie. Carson Wentz. And this one to Jordan Addison. Jaden Daniels. Bill. Gosh, Bill is so disappointing in this game. I had too much of him. Chris Moore. Yeah. Anytime you get these 3K, these value wide receivers that are chalk, like it's almost more times than not, it's just a fade in tournaments. They rarely hit their 3K typically for a reason. And it's often like the other wide receiver in the offense who is not getting any ownership. It is the one that you want. So yeah, it looks like you had a good amount of Caleb, mainly Jaden, and kind of just mixing it up. Looks like probably some hand builds. But shout out to Supersonic Bros. First week at DFS Army, top 20 in the Millie. Love to see it. So let's do one more thing. I want to take a look at Uticow because I know Uticow plays the Millie, one of the top DFS pros in the world, arguably the top today. I want to see what he did. So he had a Jalen Hurts double. And I got to tell you, I had some Jalen Hurts doubles live, and the afternoon just did not get there. Just had too much Washington in those games. Had Ertz, which he had a good score, but not like a gotta have it score. Had a ton of Ertz, had a ton of Bill. So yeah, it just wasn't nearly enough, but was live going into those afternoon games. And yeah, defense killed him there. Cortland Sutton in that lineup. Judkins. This one was a Dak single with Chris Moore bring back. He had some Godson. Double tight end, another double tight end. A lot of double tight end. All of his top lineups were double tight end. So it was, in fact, a double tight end week. Jaden, Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey with the 0. I had a lot of Luke McCaffrey too. Not like 40% a lot, but like probably 20%. 20% is 0. Not good. Not good, Bob. Dak plus CD with 2 bringbacks, Chris Moore and Zach Ertz. So, and I know that Utica is more of a sim guy. So I'm seeing probably like a lot of like simulated lineups essentially with, these heavy game environments, like with the Cowboys and the Commanders, and a lot of ownership with these builds too. So eating a lot of chalk. It was like 200%, 160. Yeah, it's one of the lower ones. This was a Knicks to Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton. So a Knicks double. Now, Mims did make salary. So I think that might have been optimal. Like if you would have got, Knicks to Marvin Mims at 3,500 and, avoided the Sutton bomb. That probably would have done it. Let's take a look at his exposures. A lot of Cortland Sutton. So he was heavy on Sutton. Let's see. And then he had Mims, 10% Mims. So a good amount of Mims. He had 4% Troy Franklin. So just going to go out on a limb here, guessing he had a decent amount of Bo Nix, 14%, almost triple the field. Sutton was almost his highest exposure. Had Justin Jefferson, had Olave at a lot of exposure. Rashee Rice, little under on Rashee Rice. AJ Brown, 24%. So clearly liked the Broncos. Also a little bit of like game sack environments, I'm guessing, with Wandale, with Lil Jordan Humphrey, but like the Broncos. And then liked that Minnesota and Philly game because a lot of Justin Jefferson, double the field there. And then, yeah, almost crazy. No Devonta, but a lot of A.J. Brown. Be curious to see if he had any Saquon Barkley. Ertz, Tyler Warren, Trey McBride. So those were the high exposures at tight end. Yeah, 43% Trey McBride. That's a lot. Double the field almost on Warren, and then over the field on Ertz as well. 2% Godson. So, basically double the field there. A little under on Goddard. Let's get to running back. Did he have a lot of Saquon? No, 2%. Jonathan Taylor, Quishon Judkins, Breece Hall, 74% Breece Hall. That's what killed him. He had so many good calls. If he does not have 74% Breece Hall, he probably wins a Millie. are very close. Yeah, it's a game of stands. I mean, I unchecked Brees Hall in some spots just because I just didn't understand the chalk and I didn't understand the projection, and ended up being right. He was a good cash game play, bad GPP play. And speaking of cash games, we can go to my lineup. Let's see. I got to go back here. There we go. So I had Jaden Daniels as a cash core. And so I actually cashed this week. But I'm going to say something. If I have a cash play on my sheet, they're definitely getting hurt this year because I've had it happen multiple times. 3 times that I can think of just this season, that we're 7 weeks in. So where either my quarterback has gotten hurt, maybe even 4 times, because I feel like there was a week where Jaden got hurt. I could be wrong on that as well. But also I had CeeDee Lamb as a cash play when he got hurt the first time, and then Puka last week when he got hurt. Hit the cash line, ended up having a small profit in cash. We can kind of look at, my sheet, the process. I had Jacobs as a very strong play. And then with the questionable tag with the illness and the calf, ended up bumping him down. Had Jonathan Taylor as a top play. Just the only bump down with Jonathan Taylor was the price and the potential negative game script. But like clearing away, he was the top running back on the slate, all things considered. Javonte, Ja'Cory Crosby, Mary, that was the one miss, but the matchup was right. So I just ended up not getting there on that one, but he didn't make my cash lineup anyway because I did pivot to Brees Hall just because his ownership was so much higher than JCM's. I just kind of felt like you had to play him. Really got on Justin Jefferson late, and CeeDee Lamb. I loved CeeDee Lamb. Rashee Rice was a cash core for me with his projection. He was just underpriced, and it just was too good of a spot. The ownership he was getting, it was just like, he's core. Just play him. Don't get cute. Olave did well. Really did well at wide receiver here. Especially, Chris Moore, not going to win you the tournament with 7 points, but definitely was viable at 3K with the ownership that he was getting and the elevated opportunities. And then I really got on. I was heavily on Harold Fannin. And then once all the wide receivers got ruled out, Debo and McLaurin, I just switched to Ertz, and that ended up working out. I did have Denver D as the chalk, but I didn't end up getting to them just because I didn't have the salary, and I always prefer the pay down. I had so much salary that I did not go down to the Panthers D, but it ended up working out when I hand built because the Browns were in a really good spot as well. As you'll see here, they got me 25. Why does this do this? 25 points. So ended up being the defense that I needed, and he was just like perfect salary. So Jaden Daniels, he, 18 points. Like he definitely, if he doesn't get hurt, he's getting over 20. But just a bad game, and especially with the hamstring injury, still was able to hit the cash line. So I was fortunate for that, and I think him just being the highest owned quarterback and the other chalk quarterback getting what I would feel like Mahomes got like 23 points, something like that, maybe 25. Like it wasn't that big of a difference, and I just, based on the construction I had, I ended up getting there because I had Judkins in my lineup who got 26, and Rashee Rice and CeeDee Lamb. And I was able to get both Jefferson and Lamb in there as the 7K guys because I paid down. Chris Moore got 7 points. Avoided the tight end landmines. Ertz 12 points, like at 3,800. That is what you need. And because of really, if we're being honest, because of my defense, the 25 points, that is what saved me with Jaden Daniels only getting 18. Brees Hall, I wish I had not played him at all because it just didn't make sense. When I was looking at the chalk, it just looked like bad chalk, but his ownership was so high. I was like, I'm just going to trust the projection. I'm going to trust the ownership. I'm going to fade that all day in tournaments as I did. But I just thought like he was a good cash play. Overall, I think the process for this cash lineup was sound. I got my studs in great spots. I trusted the projections. I leaned into the chalk, and I was able to hit the cash line. Jaden Daniels doesn't get hurt. I probably don't lose this. I lost one like head to head by like 40 points. So I would have lost a couple head to heads, but I would have had a better ROI day. I profited, but it would have been a more profitable day had Daniels not gotten hurt, but went pretty well overall. If we can just stop at the injuries and cash, that would actually be fabulous. But that is going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you for another week in review. If you like these, let me know. Let me know how you did in cash. Let me know how you did in tournaments. And smash that like button. If you are not subscribed, subscribe to the channel because we got a lot of content coming your way rest of the season. So I will see you all on the next one. Take care.